Hey everyone, it's DinaKalmeta here. And for today's news, I do have some updates that I'd like to share with you in regards to Cuba, Iran, Israel, the United States. We're going to talk about Russia, Ukraine, and NATO. But I first want to take you to this report from Fox News. Cuba's Coast Guard shot 4 people, and they're unalived, and wounded 6 others aboard a U.S. registered speedboat in an exchange of fire off the island's coast. This came from the Interior Ministry. In a statement, the ministry said a Cuban patrol vessel had approached the Florida registered boat to identify those on board when shots were fired from the boat, wounding the captain of the Cuban craft. According to the statement, the boat registered in Florida was detected within Cuban territorial waters on Wednesday morning on the northeast side of the El Pino Channel. Cuban border troops moved in to inspect the vessel, but the crew of the violating speedboat opened fire, prompting return fire from Cuban forces. Now, this incident comes as Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in the Caribbean for a summit, and he is meeting with regional leaders for closed-door talks on security, economic cooperation, and shared concerns about U.S. politics in the hemisphere. So definitely a very concerning story here, and it's just now breaking today, Wednesday, February 25th, so I will definitely keep you all updated. Now, I would like to move along and talk about where we're at as far as Trump's decision on Iran. Here were a few headlines from the last few days. President Trump said on Thursday that Iran has no more than 10 to 15 days, pretty much maximum, to reach a deal with the U.S. before consequences follow. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump signaled that the negotiations over Iran's advancing nuclear program are approaching a decisive moment. U.S. officials remain focused on curbing Iran's enrichment activities, while broader concerns include Iran's ballistic missile program, its support for proxy forces across the Middle East, and its internal crackdowns on dissent. Trump stated that we're going to make a deal, or we're going to get a deal, one way or another. While the administration has not detailed whether it seeks a full dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, the message was unmistakable. Time is short. Trump had warned that if diplomacy fails, the outcome could be unfortunate for Iran. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has issued a stark warning to the United States against launching any new military strikes on Iran, insisting that such moves would have serious consequences and risk destabilizing the already tense Middle East. In an interview aired on Saudi television, the Russian foreign minister cautioned that past strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, some conducted by the U.S. and Israel, carried out real risks, including potential nuclear incidents, and undermined international treaties monitored by the IAEA. He stressed that regional powers, especially Arab and Gulf states, do not want escalating conflict and are urging restraint in a period of heightened tension. Russia has stated that it remains in close contact with Iranian leaders and believes a diplomatic solution that respects Iran's rights under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is preferable to military confrontation. Fox News is reporting that Iran is nearing a deal with China to acquire supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles, a move that could significantly raise the stakes in the Middle East as U.S. carrier strike groups assemble within striking distance. The supersonic weapons, which can travel roughly 180 miles and fly low to evade ship defenses, would enhance Iran's ability to target U.S. naval forces operating in the region. The reported deal comes as President Trump warns Iran of consequences if it fails to curb its nuclear program. While the Pentagon has deployed multiple carrier strike groups to the region, including the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, the buildup marks one of the largest U.S. naval deployments in the region in recent years. A White House official told Fox News that the president remains firm that Iran cannot develop nuclear weapons or enrich uranium. But this new purchase could be a game changer if Iran has supersonic capability to attack ships in the area. And the thing is, these missiles are very difficult to intercept. Still, U.S. forces maintain layered defenses against Iranian threats, including Patriot missile batteries, Navy destroyers equipped with standard missile interceptors, and F-35 stealth fighters. Now, with that said, WIN is reporting that Israel is reportedly raising its global security posture amid warnings that Iranian-backed groups may target Israeli embassies if the United States strikes Iran's nuclear infrastructure. According to an Israeli official speaking to Saudi media, Jerusalem has received multiple alerts indicating that Iran could activate proxy networks to attack diplomatic missions across Europe, the Far East, and even Latin America. Security levels have heightened, contingency plans are in motion, and the possibility of evacuating certain embassies is now under consideration. Now, with that said, the U.S. State Department on Monday ordered the Department of Non-Emergency U.S. government personnel and eligible family members from the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, citing heightened security concerns. The Times of Israel is reporting that President Trump is considering launching a limited strike on Iran in the immediate future to pressure Iran to agree to his nuclear demands. Now, that came from the New York Times originally. If the Islamic Republic continues to hold out, that strike could be followed by a far larger campaign later this year targeting the regime change. The Times of Israel is also reporting that American refueler and cargo planes were spotted at the airport in Tel Aviv on Monday. There was no comment from Israeli authorities regarding the American military deployment at Israel's main civilian airport. The Boeing KC-135 refuelers and the C-17 Globemaster cargo planes had arrived at the airport over the course of the preceding day. It was unclear whether they were in the country temporarily or as part of a stopover. As of right now, the United States has surged more than 150 aircraft into Europe and the Middle East following stalled nuclear talks with Iran. The buildup includes fighter jets, refueling tankers, surveillance aircraft, and 2 aircraft carriers, marking one of the region's largest U.S. force concentrations in over 2 decades. The assets now include F-35s, F-22s, E-3G Sentry surveillance planes, and carrier strike groups led by the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford. Analysts are saying that the force posture suggests preparation for a sustained air campaign rather than a ground invasion. JNS is reporting that, according to an Iranian official, nuke talks with the United States are planned for early March. And that will be a third round of indirect nuclear talks between the two nations. The official also stated that the negotiations continue and the possibility of reaching an interim agreement does exist. I don't know. Are they stalling? I guess time will tell. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that Iran's supreme leader has taken steps to prepare for the possibility of his own elimination. He appointed his close ally as the country's de facto leader during the height of the anti-government protests in January. So it definitely sounds like for now with Iran, things are up in the air. So I guess we're just going to have to wait to see what happens. But I would like to move along and talk about what is going on in Europe. This comes from Express News. Putin has already triggered World War III, according to Ukraine's President Zelensky, insisting that the only way to stop him is through overwhelming military and economic pressure. In a weekend interview at Kyiv's central government complex, Zelensky rejected calls for his country to hand over occupied land in exchange for peace, arguing that Putin's territorial ambitions stretch well beyond Ukrainian soil. When asked about the specter of World War III coming to Europe, he simply said, "I believe that Putin has already started it. The question is how much territory he will be able to seize and how to stop him. Russia wants to impose on the world a different way of life and change the lives people have chosen for themselves." In the meantime, over in Russia, tensions between Russia and the West have skyrocketed over the weekend when Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov issued a direct nuclear threat at one of NATO's members. Peskov told the Russian news outlet Vesti that the Kremlin is ready to do anything needed to ensure the country's security and warned one of the Baltic states over the deployment of nuclear weapons on its territory. Addressing Estonia, which on February 18th signaled it was open to host a NATO ally's nuclear weapons on its territory if deemed necessary, he said that if there are nuclear weapons on Estonia territory aimed at us, then our nuclear weapons will be aimed at Estonia territory, and Estonia must clearly understand this. Now, it's also been reported that Russia's nuclear triad is an unconditional priority as the country continues to improve its military and technological capabilities. This is coming from President Putin. The Russian president pledged to strengthen the army and navy using combat experience from the Ukraine conflict and boost combat readiness across all military branches with the help of Russia's science and high-tech industries. Interesting to note that this address came less than a month after the expiration of the New START Treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms control agreement between Russia and the United States. 9 U.S. fighter jets have been scrambled to intercept 5 Russian warplanes spotted off Alaska. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, based at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado, said it had detected and tracked 2 Tu-95 long-range strategic bombers, 2 Su-35 fighter planes, and 1 A-50 spy plane across Alaska's coastal air defense identification zone. NORAD said it has responded by launching 2 F-16s, 2 F-35s, and 1 E-3 and 4 KC-135s to intercept the planes. The command described the Russian activity in the area a regular occurrence that is not typically considered a threat, adding that the 5 planes have not crossed into U.S. or Canadian airspace. A similar occurrence took place just last September, when 2 Tu-95s and 2 Su-35s were spotted in the same zone. NORAD said at the time that although the presence of the Russian aircraft in the zone is a common sight and non-aggressive, it could be interpreted as a test of the U.S. and NATO preparedness. And over in Canada, the defense minister says that rising global uncertainty is driving a surge of Canadians to enlist in the military. He said that in the past 8 months, there has been a 13% increase in new recruits to the Canadian Armed Forces. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government is pouring tens of billions of dollars into its military following President Trump's economic attacks and threats to annex Canada as the 51st state, as well as his complaints about Canada and other NATO allies free riding on U.S. coattails. Canada is set to meet the previous NATO spending target of 2% of GDP in the coming months. It has pledged that by 2035, Canada will meet the 5% benchmark that Trump foisted on the alliance last year. Greenland's prime minister has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's offer to send a hospital ship to Greenland. On Saturday, President Trump said he would send a great hospital boat to the Arctic island to take care of what he called its many people who are sick and not being taken care of. Nielsen replied in a Facebook post on Sunday saying it will be a no thank you from here. President Trump's idea of sending an American hospital ship here to Greenland has been noted, but we have a public health care system where treatment is free for citizens. He also said that the island does not require unsolicited aid from President Trump. President Trump has intensified his push to claim the Danish autonomous territory for the U.S. since last year, mocking its defenses, which he said consist of 2 dog sleds. He also argued that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security, claiming it is at risk from China and Russia, which have both dismissed the claims. The annexation push has led to a growing diplomatic rift between Washington and its European NATO allies. I don't know if you guys have thought of this, but it seems like every era has a moment where the world is holding its breath. I think this is that moment. Wars don't begin with a first strike, you guys. They begin when the price of peace becomes too expensive, and we're seeing that right now with Iran, Ukraine, and Russia. But the most dangerous moments are not the loud ones. They're the quiet ones right before the decision. And that decision is being shaped right now in the Middle East and Europe and behind closed doors. But with that said, those are your headlines for today. I want to hear from you guys. Tell me your thoughts about everything that I reported on today. Also, don't forget to come visit me on my social media pages as well as my website. And I know I have to get that updated. But don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you never miss a show. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.